Hi, in this video I will go through some of the changes and improvements we did to our Delivery API v2. So the Delivery API is what you use to fetch the map data in Interspeed. So let's have a look. So the first thing I want to show you is here. I have a blog schema, and if you scroll down, there's a list of blog posts on the blog page, and each post has a reference to an image. And it's of type reference based on origin ID and for the alias with the name asset. No changes here. So if we go to our view 1 of the Delivery API and request that view, we see down here that we have the image reference. Inside, we also see that we have the URL and the name. That's the two actually properties that you have mapped as a schema creator in this case. But besides that, we also have a bunch of other properties. We have the ID, we have the view, and we have the type. And these are all the properties that we use internally in Interspeed to resolve the schema references. So if we go to v2 of our Delivery API instead, we can see that we still have the image reference, but now we only have the references, the properties that are actually mapped in the schema itself. We don't have all these additional system properties that we use internally. So it's a much cleaner response. And also, of course, of that, it will lower the download size also. Cool. So another thing I want to show you is actually a feature that we have also introduced in v1 version of our Delivery API. So if we go here to settings, we can see that I have, in this case, multiple data sources. I have one from Contentful, and I also have another data source from Umbraco. So if we go back to our blog schema once again, we can see that this schema is actually triggering on the blog type from the Umbraco source. And down here we have the new feature. It's the source property. So before that, whenever you had a view reference, it would always be a view reference to the same data source as the source entity that you are triggering on. But now you have the options to specify another source. So in this case, the image here is actually coming from the Contentful source and not the Umbraco source, and that I have specified here. It was not possible before, so now you have additional options to map data across multiple data sources. We see customers working with different data sources. It doesn't have to be Contentful or Umbraco. Yes. So let's jump in. Now let's actually try to remove this property. Just save it, and we deploy it to a development environment. Like this. If we request a page once again, we see that we now get a null value for our image. That's also expected because we cannot resolve the reference. It's not a valid reference anymore. But one of the other things that we have introduced in v2 is that we have the missing view references up here in the metadata. So here you can see the view ID that we are trying to resolve, and you can also see the path of where in the response the reference is missing. So in this case, it's the post and position 0 in the array dot image. So this means the first blog post here and the image property, and that's null. So that's just something that you can use for debugging purpose and to figure out why my schema not as I expected. So the last thing I want to show you is multiple handles. So let's jump back to Postman. I have another example here. Once again, we are testing the v1 version of a Delivery API, and I have requested a handle called navigation-en-us. So this will simply give us a tree structure that we can use to build our navigation on the website. In the v1 version, we can see that we are using the key up here. This key is actually the alias of the schema that has created this view. So let's say I want to request the Danish navigation instead. So da-dk. we can see that I also get the Danish navigation. So now we have DA in the URLs. Okay, this is working fine still. But let's say I want to request both the Danish navigation and the American navigation. Oops, this will give us an error. And that's because these two navigation views are based off the same schema, and we use the schema alias as the key. And this will, of course, by that give us a duplicate key. So in V2 we have fixed that. So now I'm requesting both the DA navigation and the US navigation. And we can see here I have the Danish navigation, and here I have the US navigation. And we can see instead of using the schema alias as the navigation key, we are using the name of the handle itself. This also makes the response cleaner, because I requested navigation-da-dk, and then this will also be the key that you fetch the data from, instead of an alias, schema alias, that you as a front-end developer might not know about because you might not have created the schema. Cool. So this was some of the changes that we did to our delivery API v2. I have included the documentation to some of the things that we had talked about, and if you haven't, please feel free to create a free EnterSpeed account and test it out.